Then the king, note that, the king, this is the only place where Jesus explicitly refers to himself as the king. Then the king will say to those on his right hand, "Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom." This is the beginning of the kingdom age. "Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Verse 37, "Then the righteous will answer him." The righteous. Those on the right hand are called the righteous. Those on the right hand are believers here. That's why they're righteous. "Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry, or feed you, or thirsty, or give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And the king will answer and say to them, "Assuredly, I say to you, and as much as you did it to one of the least of these," note this, "my brethren, you did it to me." And so the question is, verse 40, who are the brethren of Jesus Christ? The brethren of Jesus Christ here are the Jewish people. Not the church. It's the Jewish people. Joel 3 told us the basis of this judgment is the treatment of the Jewish people, of Israel, and the dividing of the land of Israel. And notice Jesus says, "When you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me." Again, this is a judgment for those who live through the tribulation. We're not going to be there. It's not for believers. If you're a non-believer, you may go through the tribulation. But this is for those who come through the tribulation. And this judgment now is the basis of this judgment is during the tribulation period. What did you do with the Jewish people? And he says here, "When you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me." When you helped my brethren, the Jewish people, by giving them food and drink and shelter and medical attention and visiting them in prison, you ministered, Jesus says, you did it to me. You ministered to me. And this reminds me of what Jesus said to Saul of Tarsus on the road to Damascus. "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" Saul was persecuting the church. And Jesus said, why do you persecute me? Persecuting his church is the same as persecuting Jesus. And here, helping the Jewish people is the same as helping Jesus, or you minister to Jesus by ministering to his people. And of course, this has a broader application of just helping people in need. But the specific context is the Jewish people during the tribulation period. During the tribulation, we know the Bible tells us the Jewish people will suffer the worst persecution they've ever experienced in history, which is saying a lot when you consider the persecution the Jewish people have already experienced throughout world history. The prophet Jeremiah tells us that the tribulation will be a time of Jacob's trouble. Zechariah 13:8 tells us 2/3 of the Jewish people will be killed during the tribulation. Only 1/3 will survive the tribulation. And the Bible tells us that Satan will unleash persecution on the Jewish people through the world leader known as the Antichrist, and a final attempt to exterminate the Jewish people from the face of the earth. In Matthew chapter 24, if you just look back in Matthew 24, verse 15, Jesus said, "Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." He's speaking to Jews living in Israel, in Judea. He's saying to them, when this happens at the midpoint of the tribulation period, and the Antichrist turns against you and begins to persecute the Jews, those living in Israel, run for your lives, flee to the mountains, go out to the desert. Let him who's on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. There's no time to pack. Let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, because it's going to slow you down. And pray that your flight may not be in winter, because they're going to be fleeing out into the desert, and the winter's the rainy season, and the roads flood in the desert. Or on the Sabbath. Again, he's writing to Jews. He's writing to Jews here. Everything shuts down on the Sabbath in Israel. For then there will be great tribulation, such as not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, the Jewish people, those days will be shortened. Satan will seek to destroy the Jewish people off the face of the earth. And the Jewish people living in Israel at that time will have to flee into the mountains and flee into the desert for refuge from the Antichrist and from his forces. And during that time, some Gentile believers will help the Jewish people, Jesus' brethren. As the Jews are being persecuted, some will provide food for them and drink and shelter and medical care and visit them in prisons at a time when it will be very dangerous to do so. You know, during World War II, a small number of Christians in Europe helped the Jewish people escape extermination at the hands of the Nazis by hiding Jews in their homes from the Nazis. At a time when most people were hostile toward the Jews or indifferent about what was happening to the Jews, there was a minority of ordinary people who helped them at great personal risk. I think of Corrie ten Boom. Maybe you've heard of her or read her book, Hiding Place. Corrie ten Boom was a Christian whose family hid Jews in their home in Holland to protect them from Nazi persecution. And Corrie ten Boom and her family were discovered by the Nazis and arrested and sent to a concentration camp for helping the Jews.